Hey, Bran,
Yeah.
what's a 10-letter word that starts with GAS?
I don't know.
An automobile.
That one wasn't bad. I can't even lie. That one really wasn't bad. Folks, welcome back to Brand Coverage. I'm Brandon Carney, alongside Pat Gustafson, who was the proprietor of today's dad joke. That was pretty solid. I got to give you credit for that one.
I
Folks,
do some things right in life.
some things you do right, folks. Thank you for joining us for this once again off our normal schedule edition of Brand Coverage. Now, I do have to say, the main reason that we are off schedule is because Pat decided, and understandably so, he wanted to go see his alumni school, his school that he graduated from, go play for a spot in the NCAA tournament. Central Connecticut State University was the #1 team in the Northeast Conference this season, so in theory, they were likely headed to the NCAA tournament. However, as it is with these small conferences, for those of you that don't follow college basketball, you have to win your conference tournament. What you do in the regular season doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It kind of just tells you how good you are.
Literally doesn't matter at all.
So we could have done this pod on Tuesday had Pat not been there.
Should've.
Pat. Was it worth it? How did that go? How was the experience? Who's Central going to be playing this in March in the NCAA tournament? How's that going to go?
Well, they don't have enough money to play in the CBI.
I think it's like the CBC, isn't it? It's like the Crown Basketball Cup.
Whatever it was, they were invited last year and simply did not have the funds to do it now. Now that the NIT decided that there's no more automatic bid if you win your conference regular season, which is wrong. It was the worst fucking basketball game I've seen live in my life. And I've seen a lot of bad basketball in that gymnasium specifically.
Yep.
Moment was too big. I don't want to say too much bad about these guys because they have really turned the program around. They're all good kids, but they were fucking awful.
Yeah.
Moment was too big. Bad turnovers, bad shot selection, just dribbling around too much. All of these things you can just attribute to nerves. All of it you can attribute to nerves, and it's a real shame because they have 2 straight regular season championships and absolutely nothing to show for. But yeah, this was their last chance. I mean, their coach is most likely gone. They have 6 seniors. Their best returning player will certainly follow the coach. This was basically their last chance before an impending rebuild, and what they have to show for it is nothing, and it is absolutely fucking devastating.
Yeah, I will say I decided not to sit down and watch the entire game. I actually went I went for a run during the first half of the game, and mid-run I checked the score and I see 3 minutes left in the first half, and the score is 16-16.
And I was like 20 at half. Yeah.
I was like, oh dear. I am glad I didn't spend my time sitting down to watch this. I knew I'd still get home to see the end of it. Because look, at the end of the day, like, I'm a Yukon guy. We're Connecticut guys. We are rooting for teams from Connecticut. There was a chance. I mean, there's still a chance that 3 Connecticut teams could end up in the tournament. There was a chance for 4 had Central made it. And we love when our tiny little state happens to just be like, you know what we're good at? Basketball. And it's multiple schools, not just Yukon sometimes. So look, unfortunate that it played out that way. Turns out I guess we should have done the pod on Tuesday. But honestly, Pat, all's well that ends well, because there had been more moves that trickled in from Tuesday until now.
It worked out all right.
Yeah, the bulk of it was done on Monday and Tuesday, but there were a few moves here in the last couple days that we would have had.
There was one about 5 minutes ago, yeah.
We would have had to miss out. What was 5 minutes ago? God, I'm sure I saw it. But
Kareem Hunt re-signed.
Yes, Kareem Hunt back with the Chiefs. Yes, it's not even on the show sheet, but yes, folks. Today we will obviously be covering all of free agency, everything that has happened thus far, and even the days leading up, because it has been 10 days now since we last spoke to you guys, and the days leading up to free agency were just as wild, if not more wild than free agency itself, because there were so many guys that got cut and were just immediately eligible to sign. They did not have to wait until the legal tampering period began. So we have all those moves. We'll cover them for you, real life and fantasy takeaways, because this show encompasses them both. Find you another show that does both. You can't. We're the best. So let's start here, Pat. Let me hit the news thing, because there's just a lot of news.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
So I figure it makes the most sense, Pat, to start off with our own teams, just to give a couple of takeaways here. I will start off here with the Patriots. Overall, did pretty great. I mean, I'm pretty happy with what they ended up doing. It is night and day from last season where, last offseason we had a lot of cap space too, and we did effectively nothing with it. We ended up signing Jacoby Brissett, Antonio Gibson, maybe a couple other guys that are unimportant.
Could you imagine that, having a fuck ton of cap space and then doing nothing with it? That's interesting. Go on.
I know there might be another team that does apply to this offseason, but the Patriots, I will say, went a bit of an unexpected direction. I guess I should have expected it with a coach like Mike Vrabel, leading the way now, but it was very, very, very defense focused in free agency for the Patriots. Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, Robert Spillane, Harold Landry, a lot of defensive pieces, and then on the offensive side, they did add Mac Hollins as as at least a veteran receiver. I mean, look, I know, but unironically, the best receiver on our roster now. So I'll say this. Sure. I'll say this though, with a couple of days to sit on it, this is where I've landed. I'm happy they spent money. I understand it's kind of a beggars can't be choosers thing, because last offseason we did actually nothing. But I am a little concerned at this point about the lack of addressing the biggest needs. The biggest needs were offensive line and wide receiver. We did sign one offensive lineman. It was Morgan Moses, to hopefully shore up that right tackle position with at least a solid veteran. I'm happy with that. And Mac Hollins is, I like that addition as far as not just a player, but a culture guy. We know Mac Hollins is known as a leader. So that's great. But I'm concerned that even if the defense is better, and maybe this will help us scrounge out some more wins of like the 20-17 caliber next season, I don't like that the biggest needs have kind of gone unaddressed, because now, if we sign Cooper Kupp, that's great. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen either. And so that's where I'm a little worried, because you can't address all these things in the draft. And free agency is now getting pretty dried up. And so unless there's a big trade on the horizon, I am concerned that offensively it's going to be a lot of the same as it was last year, especially with the offensive line. Releasing David Andrews as well. There's just question marks everywhere except right tackle and right guard with Mike Onwenu. And that scares me. And I don't know who Drake May is going to be throwing the ball to. I assume, again, they're going to draft a receiver. They're going to draft a lineman or several. But as of right now, those things concern me. I'm at least happy, though, that we did get some talent on the defensive side of the ball.
That feels like the Mike Vrabel way, right? In Tennessee. Obviously, they had A.J. Brown, as a standout there.
They had Derrick Henry, too, which
what I mean in the sense, like, wide receivers and offensive line, that line fucking deteriorated by the end of his tenure in Tennessee. So, but from the Patriots standpoint, the volume is good. You have cap space and you're signing solid players with good track records. The offensive line, same thought with the Raiders too, is just that there was not much out there, especially with Trey Smith getting tagged. There just wasn't a whole lot of top-of-the-line offensive linemen you could go out and sign. And I think the Patriots and the Raiders are both in I think I know where the Raiders are going with the draft, but they're in a position to draft one of the top one or two offensive linemen here.
Yeah, my thing is, I watch what the Bears have done, right, this offseason, and the Bears literally were like, hey, our offensive line stinks. We are going to make a concerted effort to go and fix that. And I'm like, not to say it's not that hard. Two of those were trades where they had to give up assets to get Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, but they signed Drew Dahlman, and it feels like when you're a team that has a need at offensive line, it comes down to willingness and just effort to make it happen. And I just don't understand why the Patriots aren't doing a little more to not have actual paper clips on the offensive line, because it's bad. It's really bad. Ben Johnson got to the Bears and said, hey guys, fucking fix this. This isn't going to work. My offense isn't going to work without at least a league average offensive line. And the Patriots right now, there's a lot of offseason left, but they are kind of sitting on their hands as far as it goes. So that does concern me, but hey, It is what it is, I suppose. But we'll get into all of these free agent moves. Pat, do you have anything else to say on the Raiders, or was that
I mean, the Raiders, the only thing is they just did fucking nothing. They signed... I think their only 2 offensive signings were fucking Alex Kappa, who was like a subway turnstile this past season.
Arguably the worst starting offensive lineman.
And Raheem Mostert, which wasn't even until yesterday.
Baby.
Which wasn't even until yesterday
Mustard.
as well. To have all that money and to basically do nothing and to watch Robert Spillane and Trayvon Merrick and, one other guy, and Devine Diablo, all 3 really solid players from the same draft class, except Spillane. They did bring back Malcolm Kuntz, which was a great signing, having him with Crosby and whatever the fuck you're going to get out of Tyree Wilson at this point. But, like I said, did nothing on the offensive line because there wasn't much for them to do. Mm-hmm. And based on what they did, I think they're going to take Ashton Genty at 6 here.
It seems possible, for sure.
What do you do with the offensive line then? Like, if they were going to be sitting there at 6 being like, yep, offensive lineman. For who? Raheem Mostert? Zamir White, Sincere McCormick, like it's gonna. They're gonna have a hole one way or another, and but again, their hands were kind of tied here. But yeah, just a very. I mean, we'll talk about the big move they made, but in terms of actual free agent signings, just very, very underwhelmed with the assets they had.
Yeah, totally understand that. Let's get into the biggest moves here. We're going to kind of go position by position. We'll start with the QB carousel, which has not settled yet. But, folks, the carousel is spinning, baby. It's spinning. It's still spinning a little bit slower now because some guys have signed, and we'll talk about them right now. The first move here that I think nobody saw coming, Pat, we did our quarterback, destination predictions, and this really threw a wrench and just kind of removed any possibility that we would get basically any of these predictions right, or at least most of them. The Raiders traded a 3rd-round pick for Geno Smith. Now, I'll say this, Pat. I don't know what the plan is for the rest of the Raiders roster, but I love this move because the Raiders were very much in no man's land as far as trying to solve the quarterback position right now. 6th overall pick does not lend you the option to draft a very good one or highly touted one in this draft. And free agent-wise, I mean, Geno Smith's better than Sam Darnold. He's older, but he's better, and I like that move.
I think it's in the sense that, we've seen Geno do it a little more than Darnold, and he's going to be with Pete Carroll. And yeah, he might be on the older side, and he might be slightly declining here, but like you said, they were in a terrible spot. Like, first of all, when I heard the news, I was shocked because there was no talk of Geno Smith even being on the block, let alone actually being traded.
Luka Doncic trade.
But
he's basically Luka.
But afterwards, I was just like, yeah, they look alike too. Right after it, I just went, okay. Like, I think I tweeted I was very whelmed by this. Like, I wasn't like, wow, what a move. But I wasn't like, what are they doing? I was just like, okay. But yeah, putting more thought into it, out of all the scenarios they could have went with, this was probably the best way. I think the only way in terms of like free agency or trades they could have done better is if the Falcons, the Vikings went with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy was available. I think that, we said that months ago that would have been the priority. But with obviously McCarthy being off the board, sure, Geno's a stopgap, but when he's going to be a solid stopgap, he's in a familiar situation here. Even though they are going to have to extend him and pay him a little bit, but I think that this was just a very, very solid move when they could have really fucked something up here. But it'll be. I mean, their team's gonna be terrible. Don't get me wrong. The team's gonna be terrible, but the quarterback play is gonna be much better than it has been the last few years.
I'm always appreciative when a team seems to realize where it's at and understands where it is in the competitiveness and sort of rebuild cycle of the NFL. The Raiders are going to be the worst team in the AFC West on paper, regardless kind of what they do this offseason. I know, really throws you off there. And so I think getting a quarterback like Geno, who, I mean, is a borderline top 10 quarterback, like I think that is, even though he's not going to carry your team to, a ton of wins, I like the move because it's a low commitment, low cost sort of move. And it kind of just, like you said, he's a bridge guy. It's going to hold you over until you figure out when and where you can find a long-term solution, because that long-term solution wasn't coming this offseason. It just wasn't.
No. With them winning those couple games at the end of the year, just royally fucked them over if they wanted Ward or Shador. But But yeah, Geno is just gonna. I had something to say and then I completely lost it. Fuck. It had to do with Geno Smith in the Raiders, presumably.
Yeah, that would make sense. That is what we're talking about.
Very, very inside. Oh, he's a much better fucking bridge than Jimmy Garoppolo or Gardner Minshew. Like they've made similar kind of moves in the last 3 off seasons, but Geno Smith is head and shoulders above those two and where they were at the times of their signing. So. Yeah. At least they did something right. At least they did something right.
And I'll say, again, to touch on the fantasy aspect of this, Pat, Geno Smith is going to continue to be what he's been, which is like serviceable at times, not serviceable at other times. But I'm very I can't imagine how much more Brock Bowers can really do. But to go from the horrible quarterback play last year to, again, a guy that I really believe, like from watching him play these last few years, can play like a top 10 quarterback, at least top 15. He got the ball
to those receivers. Those receivers, all 3 of those receivers have been putting up numbers the last 2 years.
Right, and
he can get him the ball.
We'll see what else the Raiders add as far as weapons are concerned, but like right now, it's just Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers.
As of right now, Jacoby Myers is a very draftable,
for sure.
Solid pick right now. You'd have to think they're going to address it in the draft, but again, they need line help. Like how early can they get a wide receiver, and then in that case, how impactful could that guy be? So as of right now, Bowers and Myers are looking set.
Well, I think for anybody that was, looking ahead to possibly drafting Bowers in the first round, because that is essentially where he's projected to go right now, sort of late first in fantasy drafts, like I think you feel better about that now. Like you could have felt good about it before because, again, Bowers has already shown that he can play pretty well with absolute shit tier quarterbacks. And now he's got Geno, so I think this only makes you more optimistic for that as far as his first round prospects are concerned. Now, I mentioned how I appreciated that the Raiders kind of understand where they're at as a team, right? They're making moves that are congruent with where they are in the rebuild process. The Seattle Seahawks. What in the utter absolute cinnamon toast fuck is going on over in Seattle? Because, Pat, it was basically worst case scenario for Sam Darnold. Everything that as far as fit goes, everything that we've talked about in the last really several months. I mean, honestly, all season, because we didn't expect Sam Darnold to stay with the Vikings fully. We were like, look, if he's going to go somewhere else, he better go somewhere that is as helpful to him as Minnesota was, at least close. I mean, you're not going to go somewhere that has receivers the caliber of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson at tight end and Aaron Jones at running back, but you got to at least go somewhere that has an O-line that's competent, because that's always been his Achilles heel. When pressured, Sam Darnold might be the worst quarterback in football.
Literally sees ghosts.
And now he's going to Seattle, who on paper has a bottom 5 offensive line in the sport. I don't know what the fuck the Seahawks are doing here, especially after trading away DK Metcalf.
Well, that's the thing is I don't necessarily hate the decision to get Sam Darnold in a vacuum. Like, he's going to be with Clint Kubiak, who Clint Kubiak has proven, he's a Shanahan disciple. He was with Darnold in that 1 year in San Francisco. So we talked a lot about that. It's going to be a lot about the play caller. And Clint Kubiak is a good fit, but it's like 100%. In terms from an organizational standpoint, what are they doing? Like, they go and trade DK Metcalf. You release Tyler Lockett. And then you go and pay a bunch of money to Sam Darnold. Oh, you trade fucking Geno Smith as well. But, I mean, what? Darnold's got to be 10 years younger than
Darnold's 27. Geno's like 34.
Geno's 34. You nailed that.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it from a talent perspective. They're probably in a pretty similar range here. But again, a lot younger. And you did get a 3rd-round pick for Geno. So it's like, if they truly believe Darnold can be their guy for, the duration of this contract and beyond, being only 27 years old, more power to you. But just like, it's just so scary with what we've seen with Sam Darnold, where we've really only seen him have one. He was really good last year. Like, we saw one really good year out of him, and the rest, it's not like he's just been okay. He's been terrible. Like, he's been a backup. Yeah. He's been unplayable. So it's like, that's scary to put a lot of your faith in your rebuild and a lot of money into Sam Darnold. Like, had they not traded Metcalf and kind of still trade, Darnold would make more sense. But, like, yeah, just very, very puzzling to me. But obviously, this was their plan. They wouldn't have traded Geno. This was what they wanted all along.
It's a shit plan. I don't understand what it's going. Like, it clearly, these moves all do track with one another. Like, obviously, trade Geno, sign Darnold. Get the Metcalf contract off the books, whatever you're doing. But like, I just don't understand the plan at all because, like, again, Darnold needs that line. There's no solutions for that offensive line this offseason. Like, first of all, you've got other teams that are theoretically competing with you for any decent offensive line pieces that may come available. Hello, New England. And so I just don't, you're not going to be able to fix this in the draft. You're not really going to be able to fix it in free agency. So you're going to have to at least play out this year with a shit tier offensive line and a quarterback who shits his pants when he has a shit tier offensive line. I don't understand what they're doing. It's just really weird moves from the Seahawks. The only thing I can think of is they may end up at sort of the right destination despite taking the wrong road because, Pat, they might be horrible this year. Like the Seahawks, I could see a world where they are a bottom 3 to 5 NFL team this year. So
and that's a good division too.
Right, and that kind of accelerates, their rebuild. They end up with a top pick to maybe get a quarterback that's not Sam Darnold. But, like, that's not – I'm sure that's not their thinking right now. That's just what I'm looking at as the only sort of maybe upside for this situation. I just don't see this going well from what we know about Sam Darnold.
You don't do what they did without believing that Darnold can be the guy. And again, based on his age and the season he just had, it's like it's at least somewhat understandable, but that is a lot of faith you're putting in there, especially when you're trying to chase down the Rams and the 49ers and with the Cardinals team that will presumably get better this year. So it's like they put themselves in no man's land pretty quickly.
Well, and it's funny. It's the team that they traded with, Pat, the Geno Smith trade with the Raiders. The Seahawks are doing what we were kind of afraid that your Raiders might do, which is trick themselves into thinking that Darnold is better than he is and is more bulletproof than he is and commit to him. And it seems like our worst fear as far as that goes is coming true. It's just happening in Seattle. A team thinks Darnold is much better than he is for some reason, or just blind confidence. I don't know.
I will say, and this is sort of preaching to the choir here, but JSN
to the
stonks.
Moon.
Stonks.
The stonks are up for JSN. That is true. That is one aspect of the fantasy situation here that we should talk about because, look, we should say as of right now, we're recording this again on Friday. The Seahawks are for some reason one of the teams in the lead for Cooper Kupp, so this could change.
Makes
but
no sense either.
I know, I don't know what the fuck the Seahawks are doing. I mean, at least I guess that gets them another weapon but I don't know.
Well, they are going to need someone else. It's literally just JSN right now, and not Will Dissly, who's one of their funny. Keep talking.
Noah Fant, I think, is there.
I don't even know. He was a free agent.
Well, yeah, so I guess he's probably not there anymore. AJ Barner, I think, is there. He's pretty good.
Oh, they got MVS. Oh, yeah.
They did get MVS.
Jake Bobo.
MVS low-key is going to just keep doing what he's been doing because he is, again, with Kubiak like he was in New Orleans, and Darnold's just going to chuck him the ball. So, like, he's going to continue to be the same guy that he was forever. But JSN right now, the only weapon there, and again, for all of the shitting on Sam Darnold and not believing in him to be an actual winning NFL quarterback, he is a guy that can support fantasy assets. I mean, that's kind of been the case.
Gotta throw to someone, man.
Yeah, I mean, that he hasn't been incapable of that, throughout multiple stops of his career. I mean, he hasn't been the worst for fantasy wide receivers, especially when there's really only one guy. And right now, there's really only one guy. JSN is going to get targets funneled through him, especially with an OC like Kubiak, who, like, sometimes it really comes down to is your coordinator smart or is he dumb? Like, does he know to try to get the ball to his best players? I feel like right now Kubiak is in the smart bucket of, like, we have JSN, we're going to try to funnel things through him.
He's on the head coach trajectory. Like,
he's
definitely being viewed as one of these young offensive gurus. And he, like you said, worked with Darnold before. I like I said, I see little parts of this vision, but it's just the big picture that loses me.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. I understand too, like, if you run it back what you did last year, like, you're probably just going to continue to be sort of in no man's land. But this direction, I would have expected just a rebuild, just get somebody who's, like, really ass at quarterback and who you're not paying $30+ million a year and, whatever, chalk the year if that's how you're going to do it. Another quarterback fit, Pat, off the carousel. The Jets have signed Justin Fields. I still see a funny joke. We're not really going to touch too much on Mac Jones going to the 49ers. I'll mention it here. Mac Jones is signed with the 49ers, but with the Jets getting Fields and the Niners getting Mac Jones, somebody was like, my mock draft from 2021 was never wrong. It was just early, because this is kind of the spots that people really projected for these guys at the time. So Justin Fields is now on the Jets. My main takeaway from this is the Jets are going to be more fun to watch. but they're still going to be the Jets. I am not going to have a ton of just blind optimism about this. I don't think Justin Fields is going to be much different than what he's been the last few years, and I don't know that the Jets are really the place to get the most out of him. But he's going to be fun to watch. I mean, he's always fun to watch. Where are you at with this?
That's the like in theory, like yeah, the Jets are going to Jets, but could this be a different Jets? Because I feel like a lot in the last handful of years or so has been boiled down to nonsense. Just not you get rid of Aaron Rodgers, who is Captain Nonsense, and you bring in a guy like Aaron Glenn, very well respected, a very, very strong leader. Could this be like a turning point for the Jets where it's like, okay, we're going to focus on football now, basically? And I saw a list of like players around like 25 years old on the Jets. They have a talented roster and a young roster. In our minds, we just want to say like, oh, yep, Jets are going to Jets. But I think a lot of those things that were holding them back are gone. And granted, Justin Fields is, a low-end starter. And, he took his low-end starter money. He has a starting job. But, we've seen... I don't know, because again, like I said, like my judgment's just clouded thinking Jets are just
I think that's fair, though. We've had so many seasons now, off seasons, of trying to reset our optimism and not just looking at the color of the jersey or the logo on the jersey or the field or the helmet. But they've proven time and time again, whether it's ownership, which it probably is, or anything else, like we don't have a lot of reason to think things are just going to work out for the Jets. And I think I have even less reason to just believe things are going to work out when you get a quarterback that I like. Justin Fields. I've said all, off season and end of season that I wanted him to get a starting job somewhere just to see what he can do with it. But he's not a guy that's like shown me that he has this sort of top 10 ceiling that I don't know, maybe the Jets think he has or Jets fans think he has. It just feels like it's going to be another couple of years solution for the Jets while they maybe try to rebuild everything else. I don't see a world where it's like, oh yeah, Justin Fields and Aaron Glenn on the Jets, like that's the answer to get them into the playoffs. It just feels like this is a bad franchise, and I'm not seeing enough of a reset yet to believe that anything else is going to happen. Again, Justin Fields is going to be fun fantasy-wise. I think he's an extremely viable quarterback in fantasy because he rushes so much. I mean, when he was with the Steelers, that was quite a ride there if you managed to have him on your team. Like, he was rushing for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns during his 6 starts, I believe he had for them. I think he really only had like one bad game with them. So he'll be good for fantasy, but I'm just not seeing a lot different big picture for the Jets. Not yet. I'm not writing off Aaron Glenn. I'm not writing off the moves they've made. Getting rid of Aaron Rodgers is a positive, for sure. I just don't know that Justin Fields is going to move the needle much.
Well, it's the thing. Like you said, like you don't see like a complete reset. It might take some time. It might not be a this year kind of thing. Like they might have to kind of devolve into it with how the franchise been. Again, like you mentioned ownership. I mean, maybe Woody Johnson will stop meddling as much with the new regime
Wishful
under him
thinking.
here. But
Wishful
but that's the thing is like that's a big if, and you just don't know that. So like, I think the potential's there, and their biggest problems are gone. But again, there's still, like you said, there's still not a ton of reasons to believe in this franchise.
Yeah, if you were to bet against the Jets every year, basically since the Mark Sanchez playoff runs, you'd be up pretty big in Vegas right now. So I'm going to keep betting against them until I see something tangible that tells me I shouldn't.
Using my bookie promo code.
No, friendship ended with my bookie, but nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, the partnership's just over. It's really not anything drastic, but yeah, shout out to them, I guess. It was good while it lasted.
Shout out Coke Zero Sugar.
Shout out Coke Zero. Please sponsor us. I drink so much Coke Zero. It should be illegal. As the quarterback carousel keeps spinning, Pat, we did have a spot that we thought somebody might end up in, but we weren't entirely sure because they kind of sort of have a quarterback already, but maybe they don't. It's the Indianapolis Colts. Turned out they did sign someone, and that the rumors were true, folks. They were interested in Daniel Jones. Man. Yikes here, kinda. This is... I made a video about this yesterday where it is kind of the fairest ultimatum of all time when it comes to Anthony Richardson. It's like, hey, man, look, we've had 2 years of you here, granted, broken up by injuries and such, but that stuff does matter too. Like, we've had 2 years of you in a Colts uniform. We haven't exactly seen enough at all to commit to you fully for the long term. Beat Daniel Jones in camp, or else, is what this feels like. And I think that's totally fair. You've got 2 quarterbacks with very similar strengths and weaknesses, which is good not only for this competition purposes, but for backup purposes. Like, for whoever wins the starting job, whether it's Jones or Richardson, you will have a guy who can run the same offense behind that guy, which is always a nice thing to have. So, like, that may be part of it too, rather than just being quite as dramatic as, Jones versus Richardson. But it does appear that it is Jones versus Richardson. And I'll be rooting for Richardson, obviously, because Daniel Jones, Pat, is just fucking bad. Like, Daniel Jones has
$14 million.
Yeah, 1 year for, I know. Daniel Jones has a much larger sample size telling us that he's bad. I mean, 70 starts in New York is nothing to scoff at. And so if Richardson loses this to Daniel Jones, I don't really know what else to say. I'll say this, though. I think the Colts might be in the worst position quarterback-wise, like, at least from what we've seen from Richardson so far. I understand you can say they have the hope that Richardson will improve, but, like, right now...
Counterpoint, the New York Giants.
The New York Giants can draft somebody new, though, is where I'm at with them. Like, they can...
When?
In theory, they well, I guess what? They have the 3rd pick, right? So
they're fucked. Yeah,
it would that's contingent on if they do trade up and get Cam Ward. So again, it's a lot of projection. I feel like there is an argument that maybe a month from now we're looking at the Colts, or 2 months from now, that the Colts have the most questionable position, or the one that it's just going to take the longest to kind of reset from, because for better or for worse, Pat, they're going to sink another year into figuring out if Anthony Richardson's the guy. And if he's not, I don't know. I mean, I guess the Colts are another one that could end up with like the number 1 or 2 overall pick if things really go that bad.
Shane Steichen in the unemployment line, yep.
Yeah, like they're a team that it just feels like it's kind of sinking a little bit versus, I mean, I had a lot of hope for this team when they first signed Shane Steichen and drafted Anthony Richardson. I was like, oh, this is just Steichen with Jalen Hurts, like it's going to work. And
we've seen the glimmers, but they're just
there's
they're
been spurts.
People like to pin the Steelers as like the definition of mediocrity. But at least they like have winning records and make the playoffs. Look at the Colts these last few years.
The Colts would be happy to be the Steelers.
Like, that's the thing, is they are just mediocre, but not even good enough mediocre to truly make the playoffs here. And yeah, this is disgusting. Quite frankly, this is absolutely disgusting, because again, like, you think they've got to have faith in Anthony Richardson because they really want to go with Daniel Jones. Like, do they really want to go with Daniel Jones here? I don't know.
I don't think you have a ton of faith or confidence that he's like definitely your guy if you give Jones $14 million. Like, they could have signed a litany of backup quarterbacks for much cheaper than that. That is a contract that tells you he's got a chance to start for us. At some point during the season, at the very least. And so it's bad. Taking the fantasy route here, disgusting. I don't have much excitement or faith in any Colt, maybe except for Jonathan Taylor. He's about it. Even he's going to have down weeks.
He's not going to be in the elite echelon, though, of
yeah,
running backs. He's kind of be a tier 2 guy.
Yeah, back end RB1 kind of guy. Yeah. But it's really hard to have any faith in any of these receivers in Indianapolis, knowing that it's either of these guys throwing them the ball. I think your best bet, and the only thing I'm confident saying, is that, like, if Anthony Richardson's the guy, Alec Pierce will have good weeks. That's about all I got, and that's just because he likes to chuck the ball deep. I don't have very strong thoughts on
fucking Alec Pierce out there somewhere.
I don't have strong conviction that Michael Pittman is going to be good on a consistent basis. Josh Downs, I like Josh Downs. I think he'll be a flex-worthy sort of guy, maybe regardless who starts, but that is going to come with its down weeks as well, because we've seen both these guys have plenty of sub 200-yard passing performances, and neither of them, for whatever reason, are consistent enough with their legs to be good. Richardson came on a little bit at the end of last year when it seemed like he was kind of, I don't know if he gave up on the idea of trying to get better as a passer or them wanting him to pass more, and so
I
he's
think
on his legs
you also
more,
need to play to your guy's strengths. Like, yeah, you need to develop him as a passer, but at the end of the day, this guy is humongous and can fly. So it's
exactly.
like, you might as well lean into it. And if he wins the job, you have to think Shane Steichen. We talk about teams where coaches' seats are just absolutely blazing, and you've got to think there's going to be some sense of urgency from Steichen. So...
Yeah, looking at Richardson's stats here. So in the month of September, his carry totals were 6, 4, 8, and 3. So he was not running the ball, and that was just destroying any sort of fantasy hopes you had for him. Then he was out of commission for basically a month. I believe that was just between injuries and benching, and he came back. His carry totals were 14, 6, 10, 10, 9, 7, and 9. So he was running a lot more. He had 5 of his 6 rushing touchdowns on the season come over his last 5 starts of the season. So, I mean, if he does that more, he might become fantasy viable. But again, it's always scary to me, Pat, and this is always the conundrum, right? When you have guys who are better in fantasy than they are in real life. And we saw it with Justin Fields last year. It's like they'll put up these numbers and they might be doing well for you in fantasy, but in real life, they might get benched at any moment. And it could happen mid-game.
Look at Justin Fields. Look at Justin Fields.
Yeah, it could happen mid-game. I remember having this happen to me. I had this issue with Jalen Hurts, I think his rookie year, or maybe second year before he became Jalen Hurts.
Is that when they started Nate Sudfeld over him?
I think so. I don't remember if this issue was first or second year, but it was that. It was Jalen Hurts was not doing very well real life wise, but he was doing great fantasy wise. And so it was kind of scary week to week to try to start the guy because you're like, he might be putting up numbers for me, but he's getting benched in real life because he can't fucking hit an open man. And I think that's where we could end up with either Richardson or Jones. It's just a situation that as of right now, Pat, I'm definitely avoiding because it just smells like it's going to be bad football. And I don't really want any part of bad football in fantasy. Like not when it seems this predictable. It doesn't seem like a good situation at all. The Falcons are apparently keeping Kirk Cousins as a backup. He has the date passed? There's a certain date that was going to pass that he gets like $10 million guaranteed. I don't know if it's passed. Either way, they're not expected to get rid of him before that date hits where he gets another $10 million guaranteed on his contract. So as of right now, it seems like Kirk Cousins is going to be a Falcon next year, which kind of weird. I don't know if I actually believe that that's going to be the case or if this is just a situation where the Falcons are eating more money than they need to and are operating stupidly. I mean, God, I know, real shocker that the Falcons are doing weird shit in the front office if that is the case. So I don't know. Where do you think this lands, Pat? Do you think Kirk Cousins ends up a starter somewhere else? Let's say no. Week one, is he a starter somewhere or no?
No. Because, I mean, we'll talk about the open teams right now. There's really, 4 that are kind of unsettled here. We have to assume 2 of them will be addressed in the draft. Russell Wilson's out there. He'll be on one of those teams, and maybe Aaron Rodgers, or they could find another way to address it. Like, I don't think it's impossible, but I would assume that last team who... honestly, will probably be the Giants. Will probably be the odd team out here in this kind of sweepstakes. Maybe they'd go for Kirk Cousins. I feel like they would go some kind of cheaper, more alternative route here. Maybe a certain Italian. Oh, God, I hope not. But God, I went to Olive Garden the other day and was real obnoxious. I'm like, God, I was just like,
the fine Italian eating
establishment. Say grazie to the waiter. It was
authentic Italian cuisine.
And I've just been shitting my fucking brains out the last 2 days since then, too. That's why I was a minute late to this shit.
Pat's actually got a bedpan under him right now. So Falcons are going to keep Kirk Cousins as of right now. Now, again, those open quarterback spots, we'll get into this. The teams, as far as the QB carousel is concerned, that have yet to fully address their situations. The Giants, the Titans, the Browns, and kind of the Steelers, because the Steelers did sign back Mason Rudolph. And at this point, would I be shocked if they rolled out Mason Rudolph? Not really. Given the other options available. So we're unsure if they'll bring in somebody else. I would venture that they probably will. Gun to my head right now, Pat, Aaron Rodgers is the best one available, right? Talent-wise, I mean, he's a fucking asshat, but he's available. My guess is that Rodgers ends up with the Steelers, and that Russ ends up with the Giants. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Where are you at with these openings and with these guys? Because again, some of these are going to be addressed in the draft, and that doesn't, like, the teams that draft Cam Ward or Shador, that also doesn't preclude them from signing Russell Wilson onto their team too as a vet.
Apparently the Browns are gonna let Kenny Pickett compete for the starting job. Apparently, someone goes, "Okay, 32 teams might be too many." Like, or it was like the Browns have signed Kenny Pickett. It was like willingly. But
I saw it was part of the pitch to re-sign Myles Garrett. It was, we're going to trade for a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Fuck. But yeah, you've got to think. You kind of mentioned the Giants trading up. The Titans did absolutely fuck all at quarterback. Like they still have Will Levis.
I hate the Titans. I hate the Titans.
But the thing is, you have to think they're taking Cam Ward. Like it seems like they are going to hold and take Cam Ward, and it seems like the Browns are probably going to hold it too and draft Shador. So like you said, it kind of leaves the Steelers and the Giants here, and it seems like the Giants want Rodgers. It's just a matter, does he want them?
Yeah.
It's like the who want me 0% meme, like. And then in that case, if that would be the case, Russ would go back to Pittsburgh. But $4 million, kind of, it's more. Apparently, it's more than they paid all their quarterbacks combined last year. Because Russ was on, the league minimum, and Fields was on a cheap deal. So I guess Rudolph could be their starter, but I still predict Aaron Rodgers to the couch. That's still my prediction.
Not starting. Okay.
So like I said, Russ would either wind up in Pittsburgh or the Giants. Obviously, Pittsburgh has a better contingency if he does go to the Giants with Mason Rudolph. But if he decides to go back to welding, then the Giants are fucked. That's why I said, like, the Giants could be the odd team out here where they're just fucked.
Let's be very honest here, because I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in free agency and thinking about these teams and their quarterback situations and all that. Every team that entered this offseason needing a quarterback is fucked for the interim. Like, there's no secret formula or secret answer here among the guys that are still available. Like, there's, for the Giants, for the Browns, for the Titans, for even the Steelers, there's no answer here that, like, makes you a playoff contender, that is even a remotely long-term solution. Like, I feel like we want to be optimistic about these landing spots. Like, remember, Pat, this free agent class sucked, and we said that leading up to it. The fact that we are now in it now and just speculating about where guys could end up doesn't mean it sucks any less. So, like, we're just
you're absolutely right.
We're just kind of sharing garbage here is what these teams are doing. They're like, all right, which piece of trash do you want? I'll take the rotten apple core. You can take the empty can of tuna, and then we'll go into next season.
Say hello to used napkin.
All of these teams are pretty in the shitter. The only one I'll give some level of credit is maybe the Steelers if they get Rodgers, because Rodgers showed enough last year, and the Steelers make the fucking playoffs every year anyway, that they could at least be sort of a threat, because I think Rodgers is better than Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson, a combo of him and Fields got the Steelers to the playoffs last year. But overall, like, this is all just gross. We're just trying to figure out where the turds fit into the turd puzzle is kind of where it's going here. So we'll see what happens. The other thing I want to touch on here is, can we stop with the Vikings Rodgers rumors? And I'm not saying that they're incorrect, because I don't know that they are. I'm more concerned that they are correct, because the rumors going around are that the Vikings are internally thinking about whether they should sign Aaron Rodgers and what that would entail, and whether they want. Why the fuck would you do that? Why? I don't understand.
That's the thing, is like, you let Sam Darnold, who had a good year, walk to go get Aaron Rodgers to compete with JJ McCarthy. If they wanted someone to compete with McCarthy, keep Sam Darnold.
You just had a 27-year-old quarterback who, I understand it ended badly, and that does matter, but you had a 27-year-old quarterback lead you to what did they finish? 13-4 this year, 14-3. It was one of those. Like, to me, you don't let that guy go unless you are like, okay, we have our guy because he's the one we drafted with the 10th overall pick last year. And you're going to let him rock, and that's fine.
You think Aaron Rodgers is going to go anywhere where he's not the solidified starter? He could go home right now and just retire. Like, right. Why would he? From his perspective, why would he be a backup, and why would Minnesota want him to be anything but a backup? It makes no sense.
The only thing I can think of is, like, the Vikings, with how great of a record they had last year, they view Rodgers as more of a winner. I mean, has a Super Bowl. Granted, it was while you and I were
JJ McCarthy's
13,
a national champion.
We were 13 years old when Rodgers won his first and only Super Bowl. Like, I don't know if that's maybe the thinking is we were kind of close to competing for a championship, and maybe Rodgers can get us there, and then sort of a Brady to the Bucks effect where. I mean, the Bucks didn't have the successor at the time, but it's like we'll win this one-off championship with a vet QB and then hand it off to JJ. I guess.
Yeah, but Tom Brady's good,
right? And not
good.
a complete fucking head case as well. Like Tom Brady's an insane leader and is gonna demand a lot out of your team, but he doesn't come with quite the drama that Aaron Rodgers does because he's not willingly trying to appear on every reality show every week and or not every reality show, but every, podcast and shit. Like, just didn't crave attention quite as blatantly as Rodgers does. So yeah, it's a weird situation to me. I just hope that if Rodgers ends up somewhere that the Vikings are not it, because I have enjoyed watching the Vikings, kind of build this team they have. They're a likable team. I don't want them to become an unlikable team.
Makes no sense.
No, it's very, very odd. Now, going on to the skill players here, we'll kind of do it this way. The biggest skill player moves and then kind of the tier 2 skill player moves. So the biggest skill player moves since we last spoke, obviously number one is DK Metcalf traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Weird. Kind of a weird one, Pat. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I do.
It is, I understand, like everybody knows, the Pittsburgh Steelers could have used another receiver alongside George Pickens. However, maybe don't get the receiver with the most overlapping skill set possible as George Pickens. These are two guys who are very much known for go down the field and catch the ball, straight line sort of thing. Obviously, they both do more than that, but that's kind of the strength of these guys is the verticality. I don't understand why you would want to put them together. It's a weird one for me.
And the thing where it's like they have no quarterback right now. Like you say down the field, it's like Mason Rudolph or maybe 100-year-old Rodgers or 100-year-old Russ. It's like, but the biggest thing for me is this is still an Arthur Smith offense, and there is not going to be a ton of passing volume here. And one of these guys is going to be vocally unhappy if they are not being targeted enough. These two have shown to be, they don't hold back on their feelings. So at least from a fantasy perspective, it makes no sense. But again, they're not playing, as Arthur Smith would say, they're not playing fantasy football. Real life football, you've got a great wide receiver, one who's, not long ago you'd say is better than Pickens. Now it's pretty close. But for fantasy, it's just gross. It unfortunately knocks Pickens' value a lot.
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, I think it's a weird fit for real life, too. Like, yes, get as many good players as you can, but also get wide receivers that do different things. You don't really see receivers with such clear overlapping skill sets like this on the same team all that often. But yes, for fantasy, very, very odd. And I think it really zaps both of their values down to boom bust sort of flex types because, yes, the quarterback thing, and they were both kind of already that. I mean, Metcalf was last year while he battled injuries very much a boom bust player, got mostly unstartable by the end of the year, even with Geno Smith at quarterback. I would know I had Metcalf for a lot of the year. And then George Pickens, really caught fire with Russ for a while, but now you have another guy that's going to be, again, running a lot of the same routes, a lot of the same plays that are designed for him. It's kind of just gross for both of them. Yeah, I'll be curious to see where their ADPs both end up in fantasy. I would imagine if I had to guess right now, no earlier than the 5th round for either one in a 12-team league. Pick one.
Gotta have one. You have to have one on your fantasy team. Who are you picking first?
I'll take DK Metcalf for the more proven track record and the financial commitment as of now. That's all. Those are the only reasons.
That's fair.
And he's sort of less of a crash out than Pickens is too. I don't really know where that comes into play here.
It's
they're both kind of psychopaths, but
Steelers 7-yard run, flags on the field. It's like wide receiver. They're gonna be
they're both going fucking crazy. So yeah, that's where we're at. DK Metcalf traded to the Steelers. Another big wide receiver move. Davante Adams goes to the Rams. Unlike DK Metcalf to the Steelers. I really like this one. I think
my
this
goodness.
This
goodness.
This one, I think, we all know how I feel about old people, right, Pat? This one's about as good of a fit and
old people.
and extends the
Age
career
cap, he said, yeah.
of an older receiver about as well as a landing spot can. Because, Pat, if Demarcus Robinson can manage to score the amount of touchdowns that he has on a yearly basis in this offense, and now he's gone, what can Davante Adams do? A guy whose prowess is sort of that red zone area, playing with Matthew Stafford. This is a gorgeous fit. This is wonderful.
Yeah, because you look at him compared to Cooper Kupp, who, granted, Cooper Kupp was a great fit in that system. Davante Adams can realistically fit anywhere. Like, you've got a great outside receiver now, and Stafford is shown to be somewhat timeless, and it's like there's no reason to believe that Adams can't fit right in and be better than, what we've seen Kupp for the last year at least. Kupp's peak was insane. And even from, as we all know, I'm a bit of a Puka glazer. This doesn't change anything. I think they're just going to have two absolute fucking studs.
Yes.
in Puka and Davante Adams. Like, I think we're looking at potentially two wide receiver ones here in fantasy on the same team. And because what else they had? Tutu Atwell, Tyler Higbee. There's really nobody else that's truly going to command this volume that these two are gonna. And they're in a Sean McVay offense, there will be enough for both of these guys to be really, really good. I love it.
Yeah, and this was already an offense that really funneled its targets through two guys outside of red zone situations where Demarcus Robinson apparently became prime Rob Gronkowski the last few years, only while the other two receivers were healthy, by the way. Robinson ended up one of the weirdest fantasy cases, and I'll remember him just for the rest of my life for how weird he is, because Demarcus Robinson is only good when both Puka and Kupp are healthy, and then he just siphons the touchdowns when they get to the red zone. When one of those guys got hurt and it was like, oh, he's going to take a step up, his role's going to... Nope,
fucking shit.
Sucks. Ass. Yeah. Can't do it. He's the best wide receiver 3 of all time, I guess. But now that he's gone and the Rams, you figure they're going to continue to funnel through two targets, especially given who those two targets are. They're paying Davante Adams a good amount of money, 2-year, $44 million deal, I believe. Yeah, I mean, it's as optimistic as I've ever been about a guy whose age is in the 30s, Pat. Quite honest, to be quite honest.
And the thing is, like we talked about it last week too, is that while he's not peak Davante Adams, he's still gone out there and had 1,000 yards in spite of all of these, the nonsense missing games because of injury, being traded, all the Raiders shenanigans. He's still out there producing. He's not going to be what he was at his peak with Aaron Rodgers, but he's still a really good player.
Yeah, let's see where Fantasy Pros has Davante Adams as of right now, because I feel like he could end up being quite a value. Yeah, so this can change. It's March, but Fantasy Pros right now, consensus rankings has Davante Adams as the 39th overall player. I think that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. Wow. Pat's face is just dumbfounded in the camera right now. Honestly, though, Pat, like, given the age and given the fact that he's not the number one,
it.
And looking at the players above him, like, I can't really argue it much. I'll argue Garrett Wilson being above him because I'm over Garrett Wilson. But everybody else, like, the wide receivers right above him, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Lad McConkey, T. Higgins, JSN. I get it. I get all of them because I think Davante is going to be a guy that is a slightly lower target player than most of those guys at this age. But, like, I just feel like the touchdown equity is going to be so nice.
I think the valuable targets, in the red zone, in the end zone, Puka's going to be the one that's catching 9-10 passes a game. That may not be Adams, but I think, like we kind of saw with Kupp the last couple of years, it's like those catches he is having are, going to lead to touchdowns, big plays.
These early rankings are also giving me a hearty chuckle because Ashton Genty is the 30th overall player, and depending on landing spot, if that man is not a first rounder, I will genuinely be shocked. Go get your Ashton Genty at 30 ADP while you can, you underdog.
I'm taking him at 3 if he's a Raider.
Good, honestly, because I'll take him at 6 if you don't. Yeah. All right. Chris Godwin re-signs with the Buccaneers. Nothing but sad Patriot noises on this one. Look, I never
wanted
really
to pay that man.
I know. I never really thought we were going to get him, but all the incessant sort of rumors that the Patriots really wanted him did get to me after a while. And then turns out he re-signs with the Bucks for like $22 million a year, while the Patriots reportedly offering at least $28 million a year. But at the end of the day, I get it, Pat. I mean, think about it if you're Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans for that matter, and why they've never really left Tampa Bay. You're on a team that consistently makes the playoffs. You have always had a quarterback that is good at chucking the ball, be it Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, or Baker Mayfield. They have been great at solidifying that quarterback position. You get to play in Tampa, Florida. It's gorgeous there. And you have no state income tax. Yeah, I wouldn't fucking leave either. For New England, especially, and the goddamn cold.
There's another football team in Florida, though, that has someone familiar with Chris Godwin.
Oh, fuck, who is it? Oh, yeah.
Duval. Duval.
Oh, God, I've done.
Duval.
Yes, but Chris Godwin is not a Jaguar. We did float
and
that
that's
as a
what-
possibility because of Liam Cohen.
And that's what we said last week, too, is that just I thought there was no chance he was leaving, because why would he? And again, looking back, I think one of our viewer questions a few weeks ago was like, who's the best value right now? And I said Chris Godwin, just because he was really, really good before he got hurt. And, hopefully he can bounce back from that well. And, granted, Mike Evans had his cute little Make-A-Wish 1,000-yard season there right at the end. But... he is starting to show his age a bit, whereas opposed to Godwin, he's still as strong as ever. And Baker, had a second.
But it'll be
Baker had a
we expect him
second
to be
straight
fine.
year where he was good with now they'll have a third new offensive coordinator. But you'd think in the same offense it's going to keep up. I love Chris Godwin. It's early, but I love Chris Godwin.
Yes, I agree. Aaron Jones re-signed with the Vikings. This is another move that didn't even make it to free agency. The Vikings just kind of extended him beforehand. And look, smart for both sides. Aaron Jones had, I think, his best statistical year as a pro with Minnesota, and Minnesota really didn't have...
Healthy.
Yeah, Minnesota really didn't have an obvious, succession plan. So this isn't surprising at all to see him stick around. The guys they have behind
Ty
him.
Chandler.
We're done with Ty Chandler. As much as if he ever finds himself with a starting role, if he finds himself with a starting role on a given week because of injuries, I will still be back in on Ty Chandler.
You should be, but
off Ty Chandler in the sense of him taking a job from anybody for sure.
Or even eating that significantly into Aaron Jones's role. Yeah, he's going to have solid volume. I think he's, high-end RB2.
Yeah, so it makes sense for Aaron Jones there. I think Cam Akers is a free agent because he was the other one that was behind Aaron Jones.
Was he not with the Texans? Or am I?
He was with both. He got traded from one to the other.
In what order?
Like mid-year. I don't remember where he started and where he ended up.
The Vikings traded for him from the
It
Texans.
was Texans then Vikings. Yes, because I remember
he had those hilarious. He had that
the
hilarious
spin cycle
week where
moves with the Texans.
Where he had 12 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown with the Texans or something ridiculous. One of the weeks he was the starter.
Not shocking. So yeah, no real succession plan. Not surprising. Jones is back. Again, this is all for right now because one of the things we'll talk about leading up to the NFL draft in the next month is this running back class is insane. And so if any of these teams end up with a running back, even teams that don't seem like they really need to draft one, there's 6 to 8 really good backs that should a team with an established back draft one of them, you're going to be wondering, is this guy going to eat into their workload at all? And the Vikings, who knows if they end up being one of those guys. Najee Harris to the Chargers. Pat, I wish I had a train sound effect because...
Do I have a train whistle in here? No, I do not.
Chew fucking chew. Najee Harris is not a guy that I like very much as a real-life talent. I do not think he is that good. But the Chargers are another one, Pat. Unless they draft a guy, which they very well may... But unless they draft a guy, Najee Harris to the moon for fantasy purposes because this team wants to run, and Najee Harris is, I think, a more consistently reliable back than a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who seemed very up and down last year, but was also good in this same offense.
J.K. Dobbins was up and down, and also he's had a significant injury history, as opposed to Najee, who has been one of the more durable running backs so far in his career. And he's shown, necessarily what he does with it, that goes without saying. But he can handle a big workload. And I think in this Greg Roman offense, he's way more likely to thrive than he did in an Arthur Smith offense, and in a Steelers offense where he's getting vultured by Justin Fields at the goal line. That's not going to happen much here. Yeah, unless they really draft a running back higher up, but they have other needs. They've got other needs they need to address. So I think it's an upgrade over Dobbins, all things considered. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's about the best back you could have expected or hoped to go to the Chargers for fantasy purposes. I mean, he was the best back in the market, which again isn't saying a lot because his free agent class sucks. But still.
I think you can compare him to another former Steeler and James Conner, where it's like he's never like wows you with his talent, but the guy just fucking produces.
Yeah.
And I think that's Naji to a lesser degree. We've seen Connor have some really good games and seasons, whereas opposed to Naji's just kind of like a 6.5 out of 10.
But he gets 1,000 yards every year, Pat, in a 17-game season, which is like 62 yards a game.
But again, the one thing you got to credit him because he's out there all the time. That's part of the reason why he's out there. Availability is good. What's the stupid saying? Like, the
best ability is availability.
Fucking.
It's true. It is true.
It does help, but yeah, I could see this being very similar to James Conner, where like the talent may not be there, but he's in a good situation where he's just going to produce.
Yeah. Again, I don't love Naji as a player. I think he's just kind of mid. But this is more of a statement about scoring potential, assuming they don't add anybody to the backfield, than it is about, like, I think he's going to rack up a ton of yards, because I don't think that's going to happen. But I still believe in the Chargers offense. I mean, I believe they're going to win a fucking Super Bowl like I may have a couple of years ago. I don't know, because they seem to be cursed whenever they get to the playoffs. But I believe in Justin Herbert's ability to lead an offense, and for this, team to put their running backs in a lot of scoring positions. I think that is where Najee Harris will be the main beneficiary. Again, as of right now, because this is a team I could actually see drafting a back to play alongside him, but who knows? All right, kind of the best of the rest moves here. Again, the other running backs. Rico Dowdle goes to the Panthers. Ew.
I mean, for them, real life, that's a very good move.
Yeah,
they needed somebody better than Miles Sanders. And we did see Rico Dowdle have a solid year last year for the Cowboys. Yeah. But I think
fantasy-wise, it's gross.
He is more of a backup in real life, though. Like, the Cowboys are going to cowboy, and they're still doing it again this year, where he was in a position where he kind of had to be the starter.
Yeah.
But no, this definitely suits him much better. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I still think obviously Chuba is the guy, but Dowdle is good enough to cut into that. And then what happens when Jonathan Brooks does come back? I mean, that'll be pretty later on, you would think.
Jonathan Brooks probably won't play this year, so this would be. And Dowdle on a 1-year deal. I mean, it may just be he's out, Brooks is in, which would make sense. But it's just odd to me because, you mentioned he's probably going to be the backup. I mean, Chuba Hubbard is the better player. I think that's fairly safe to say. But Rico Dowdle had more yards than Najee Harris last year. He had 1,079 yards. He was 13th in the league in rushing, or tied for 12th. So just kind of a weird spot. I figured he would go somewhere, I don't know, where he would get a little more projected work, but I guess maybe that opportunity just wasn't really available.
Yeah.
So I could have seen it with the Bears maybe, but maybe the Bears have other plans, or maybe
who is the Broncos starting running? Is it Estime? Who is there
right now?
It's McLaughlin, Batty, and Estime, or Beatty, Batty.
They'll draft one. They will.
That's what I mean.
Sure. That's a team I'm confident.
We'll talk about teams are going to draft one, but I'm surprised that Denver didn't bring in a Rico Dowdle-esque player to go with whoever they draft, presumably early. But
it's just gross for fantasy because it really, to me, sours the idea of drafting Chuba Hubbard as a top as a top 12, 15 back. I think that makes it a lot harder.
That thing is I don't know if this will necessarily be a committee backfield. I don't think it will be. But I think it will be enough, like you said, where it will hurt.
It's annoying.
Hubbard's ADP going into the year here.
Yeah, it's annoying. I'm trying to think of a comparison backfield, but I think the first one I think of is almost the Buccaneers, where look, if Chuba Hubbard is able to still put up Bucky Irving numbers, great, but then if you've got this guy behind him that's putting up Rachaad White numbers just enough to kind of be fucking annoying, that's annoying. So it's just annoying for anybody that wanted to see kind of Chuba to the moon here, because he did show that he was really good.
The Bucky Irving glaze on Twitter is so fucking funny.
Bucky-
and I am
Bucky
just
is-
all like Sleeper always tweets about Bucky Irving, but here's
Yeah.
the thing. I'm in. I'm
so
for it,
in.
fellas. That's the
I'm
thing.
so in. I love
it's so
Bucky.
warranted, but it's just so fucking funny.
I love Bucky. One of my bigger regrets from fantasy last year is not diving into the Bucky Irving hype more and getting on that. Because I've been a Rashad White hater for years. And then they drafted a running back and I didn't buy in as much. I think I had given in to the fact that they like Rashad White enough that they weren't going to let another guy take over. But Bucky's just that good.
In my dynasty league, I needed a running back desperately, and the other guy needed a wide receiver desperately. So I got Bucky and a third for Tank Dell.
Damn. All
then
right.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
we're happy over
Tank
here.
Dell left half his leg on the
Yeah.
fucking sideline.
He left it all on the field.
He sure did. Javonte Williams to the Cowboys, along with Miles Sanders. Fucking ew.
I mean, you said the Broncos. There's no more obvious team that's going to draft a running back than the Cowboys.
You would think, but at this point, man. I don't know.
If they can run in with Javonte Williams, that's fucking disgusting, man. But yeah, they're gonna. You talk about the Broncos. Like I said earlier, I think the Raiders are gonna go with Genty. But it's very deep, especially I think there's gonna be a lot of day 2 running backs that are gonna be able to be impactful immediately here. So yeah, as after last year where it was just kind of nothing from the running back perspective, there's going to be teams that should conceivably have good offenses like the Broncos and the Cowboys with a fresh young running back, and that'll be a lot of fun fantasy wise. And the Broncos literally did nothing to complement it, while the Cowboys have done something, but nothing to imply that they're not going to be all in on whoever they get.
No, 100%. The best of the rest here with the running back, Samaje Perine goes back to his old home, the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know how I feel about this as it relates to Chase Brown, because he's going to do a little. We know what Samaje Perine does. He's going to take some of the passing game work away.
I think it will be considerably less than what Zach Moss was getting. More than Khalil
Probably.
Herbert. For sure. More
Right.
than Khalil Herbert, because Perine is at least... but honestly, if that's the move they're going to make, if they don't draft someone, holy Chase Brown. I am all in.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll make me be all in on Chase Brown, because I do think Perine's going to get a decent amount of playing time. But I think if you are a Chase Brown believer, this is about as nondescript of a move as you could hope they would make, because they were going to add somebody. They were always going to add somebody.
Of course.
But adding this sort of veteran, older guy who's only going to take some of the passing down work, I guess that's about as good as you could hope for. Elijah Mitchell goes to the Chiefs. Depth piece here. The Chiefs' backfield is going to be a very interesting one to talk about as the season gets closer, now that they have also brought in Kareem Hunt today, brought him back on a 1-year deal, because it's going to be a question of how much are we expecting from Isaiah Pacheco and how much is he going to bounce back from that injury now that they have all these guys coming in. And not that I'm saying Elijah Mitchell himself is necessarily moving the needle a lot, but the combination of him, the return of Kareem Hunt, and Isaiah Pacheco's just lingering injury, I don't know what to expect from any of these guys.
I think it's just going to be a matter of, is Pacheco healthy? Because I really think they still leaned a lot on Kareem Hunt at the end of the year, because Pacheco was really coming fresh off of one. You think realistically, if the Chiefs weren't the Chiefs in a position where they were, Super Bowl favorites, Pacheco might not have even come back.
Right.
That's the thing. They not that they brought him back too early, but they brought him back in the early portion of that recovery of that return window, and they were probably just playing it safe. And Kareem Hunt, was at least looking good. Some of his yards per carry were ugly in certain games, but if he's healthy, I don't foresee that happening. It's just going to be a case where now it's if Pacheco does go down, again, knock on wood, we don't want that. You have someone in Kareem Hunt who even in his he's got to be 100, and by that probably 30. 29, good lord.
He's dust.
No way he's
Bury
29.
him. Put him in the casket. He's dead.
Even at his old age of 29, he can easily step in here. We'll see, Pacheco a whole off season of being healthy. I think if he does go in healthy, I think the job is still his. I don't think I'm going to be quite as high on him as I was last year. He was my pal, but I'm still pretty confident that he's going to get, the lion's share there, or the chief share, sorry.
Yep. Fuck off. Kenneth Gainwell to the Steelers. Kenneth Gainwell to the Steelers. Another indication of a team that's probably going to draft a running back because they currently have 2 passing down backs that are Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren. I did see some speculation that the Steelers are probably just going to end up moving off of Cordero Patterson, and so Gainwell will step into that kick return role,
So
which
then
makes
Arthur
a lot more
Smith
sense.
Will also leave.
Yes, correct. So that would make sense if he's coming in there as a depth return guy, but it does seem like the Steelers are as likely of any team to draft a running back somewhere. Raheem Mostert to the Raiders. Talked about that one. Fucking ew, who cares? Dust. And then Alexander Mattison to the Dolphins. Unironically helps Devon Achan's stock because whenever a team signs nondescript backs behind backs that I already like, because this is a team that I talked about, Pat. I was curious to see who they would bring in behind Achan.
Oh yeah,
because they've got Jalen Wright there. We think Jalen Wright will take a step forward a little bit, but if they head into next season with only Achan, Wright, and Madison, which they very well might, that's a pretty full depth chart of at least passable guys. I'll feel pretty good about Achan's prospects.
Jeff Wilson erasure here is disturbing. No, but
Jeff Wilson has erased himself.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we saw Madison get some work in Vegas, have some decent games, but he is never gonna be what people wanted him to be, unfortunately. So yeah, he is a tried and true backup. If you're a Devon Achan owner or believer in Dynasty, whatnot, throw a fucking party. Even with Jalen Wright likely coming up. But again, if you're a Jalen Wright owner, which I am in Dynasty, Achan goes down, which, knock on wood, again, he has gone down the last 2 years.
Yeah, even if he
Jalen
doesn't,
Wright could easily step into that starter role.
Even if he
really
doesn't,
productive.
I see Jalen Wright kind of stepping into more of that Mostert combination that we had with Achan 2 years ago. Because they're going to want somebody.
That team's got to be good this year. There is a lot of pressure on that team, that coaching staff, that everything.
And they probably won't be. But for fantasy, hey, fuck it. Offense, go Zoom. At the wide receiver position, Christian Kirk traded to the Texans. Kind of fills a need here. Stephon Diggs remains a free agent. Tank Dell is not going to play this year. So this is one where I would be interested in Kirk as sort of a flex guy. However, at the same time, the Texans have also nuked their offensive line for whatever reason. That was already terrible. So I don't know how well I expect this offense just to function as a whole. But Christian Kirk, in terms of somebody needs to catch passes after Nico Collins, and Nico Collins is a guy who's had injury issues of his own. A very draftable sort of receiver in the later rounds. Diami Brown to the Jaguars. Okay, I mean, someone has to catch passes outside of Brian Thomas, I guess. Gabe Davis is a bitch, and they got rid of everybody else. So, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Move. But again, we
debatable.
Because what I said. Well, no, because what I said last week, and I guess we'll segue into the next guy. Guys like Diami Brown and Darius Slayton were gonna get paid. Just because of the nature of the market. And the Giants, I put in our show sheet, the Giants paying Darius Slayton what they did is objectively hilarious.
It is, yes, because of the comparisons to the Saquon Barkley contract, where they basically paid Slayton what they could have paid Saquon.
I viewed Slayton kind of as like a Christian Kirk type here who was going to get paid, but by a different team and was going to be on the fantasy radar. With the Giants, no. They still literally don't have a quarterback right now. No.
Yeah, it's going to be a guy that, again, might pop up and you might want to add off of waivers because he was productive in spurts last year, even with Neighbors healthy at times.
He had a 3-4 week stretch where he was really good, but then he just, not only did he kind of just fade away, he disappeared.
Yeah, it just wasn't reliable enough. I mean, this is who Darius Slayton's kind of been his whole career. When Malik Neighbors misses time, he is a pretty reliable player, but,
Daniel Jones also had a Darius Slayton fetish. He's gone.
That's true. That is very true. Josh Palmer goes to the Bills. This one's kind of on the radar, right?
Bills.
We like Josh Palmer.
Love their mid receivers.
Yeah, this is another guy to just kind of fit into the Bills' gaggle of receivers. Maybe this finally becomes the guy Josh likes, but probably not. Flex-worthy guy. That's about it. But
We'll be
anytime
having
you're
lots
attached
of
to a Josh Allen
conversations.
offense, yeah, you got to be.
We'll be having
you gotta have your eye on
conversations like we did last year. Who's gonna be the number one guy on the Bills? Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, Dalton Kincaid. We're gonna be having these same conversations. The answer, fellas, probably no one.
Probably nobody. I'm past trying to figure
Dawson
that one
Knox.
out. Not Dawson Knox. The best of the rest here, we've got DeAndre Hopkins to the Ravens. Hopkins is a part-time player at this point. Who the fuck cares? Nick
People
Westbrook
still care a lot about him, and I don't get it. Even when he went to the Titans, I was just like, who cares? But granted, he was solid in Tennessee, but now it's just like,
and they don't run 3 receiver sets all that much.
and
So he's
Mark
going to be a
Andrews
part-time player.
and Mark Andrews is their wide receiver too, quote unquote.
Right, exactly. Nick Westbrook-Ikine goes to the Dolphins. I'm sure we'll hear from him once in a while because he just kind of adds to that field stretching receiver room of, I guess, if Tyreek Hill gets hurt or something, he can just beat Tyreek Hill. Granted, the Dolphins very much got away from that last year with the incessant running of their offense through Geno Smith.
I was going
and
to say,
Devon Achane.
we
So who knows?
talked all year. We talked all year about how they literally only throw to 2 people, only for Geno Smith to just be fucking incredible. It's cinema, beautiful.
Yeah. Mac Hollins to the Patriots, we mentioned earlier. Again, another situation where we expect the Patriots to add a receiver through either the draft or free agency or both. But Pat, as it stands right now, like if the Patriots headed into the season with Mac Hollins and nobody else, like I would draft Mac Hollins with a late pick.
Well,
Because
your boy Pop Douglas or Keyshawn Butte or
I don't know. I feel like Mac Hollins is the best receiver out of those guys.
but I just think it'll be a case like last year where the guy is nobody. Like you just Hunter Henry.
Yeah,
like
no,
you
that's
just
probably
don't.
true.
You just stay away. Watching all of these weekly waiver wire YouTube videos that I would last year. It seemed like every fucking week it was a different Patriots wide receiver, and I feel like unless they bring in somebody else, whether through the draft or whatever, it's going to be more of the same.
Yeah, that's fair. DeMarcus Robinson to the 49ers. He's not Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, or Ricky
We talked
Pearsall,
about a lot
so
of mouths
don't
to
really
feed
care.
already. Don't care.
Yeah, don't really care. MVS to the Seahawks. He will continue to be the same MVS with weeks of 2 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, and followed by a week of 0 targets. It's just going to be the same exact thing on the Seahawks, just with maybe more opportunity to do it because their depth chart is barren after JSN. I mean, I guess Jake Bobo erasure. He's actually.
I was
pretty
about
good.
to say
But-
you eat those words.
I know, my bad. And then Mike Williams, Pat, is back on the Chargers. So cool. I guess.
I think it was Trey Wingo that tweeted it. It was like the picture of Mike Williams to the Chargers. It's a picture of him and the Steelers. And Trey Wingo goes, I feel like they could have found a better picture for this.
That's fair. At the tight end position, Evan Engram goes to the Broncos. This one's pretty fantasy consequential. I'm kind of interested in this one.
You know, because people wanted to make like Adam Troutman happen. People wanted to make, what was your boy's name? Oh my God.
With the
tight end of the Broncos.
Greg Dulcich.
Greg Dulcich.
Yes.
Greg Dulcich. People wanted to make him happen. Evan Ingram's a legitimately solid tight end here. And again, outside of Cortland Sutton, I mean, we saw Marvin Mims come out of fucking nowhere last year.
We sure did.
But there's still
Marvin
not
Mims won somebody in our league a championship,
Yes,
essentially.
but there's
because
still
he
not a
started.
crazy proven group behind Cortland Sutton. So I think Evan Ingram's going to slot right in. And we saw Bo Nix play really well last year, and that offense
did.
really exceed expectations. I think kind of it's going to be more of the same, where Evan Ingram's going to be drafted as more of a low-end tight end 1, but he's going to be a guy that you're going to be considering in your lineup every week.
Yep. Speaking of more of the same, Mike Gesicki goes back to the Bengals, re-signing there. This one bears monitoring just because if something gives with T. Higgins, where they
Or
do
Jamar
end up
Chase.
trading him, well, Jamar's not going to go anywhere. But like,
Except
if they,
stay home.
no, that's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like if they do give in and trade T. Higgins, like Mike Gesicki
Yeah.
becomes a very
Gesicki
legitimate.
was good
target.
last year when
He
Higgins
was.
was out. Like,
That's the thing.
legitimately good.
It was like very cut and dry. It was like whenever
Yes.
T was out, start Mike Gesicki, and it
Yep.
worked. I think 90% of the time.
Yep.
While they're both there, like week 1 comes, Jamar Chase and T Higgins are both Bengals still. You're not starting Mike Gesicki until one of these guys goes down. You're not even drafting Mike Gesicki, I wouldn't think. But he's a guy that it bears
No, I
watching
would
because.
draft him.
Look, they just committed to bringing back a guy who is going to be attached to Joe Burrow. And for as long as that's the case, you have to be kind of interested.
Absolutely.
Jawan Johnson back to the Saints. Periodically relevant sort of tight end, but just not a guy you really care all that much
He's
about.
one of
so.
those quintessential tight ends that everyone wants to be something, but unfortunately is just not going to be.
waiver boy. He is just constantly on the waivers, and we're constantly thinking about where he might end up. As far as the free agents that are still available and that we will maybe be talking about next week, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, we mentioned, J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb as running backs, and then Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks. Lots of old guys, lots of old and injured guys, which explains why they're probably not signed. So it's a bunch of guys. It's funny because of them being like older players. It really does depend. They could run the full gamut where they end up of being, hey, this guy could be super relevant because the depth chart isn't that full, or they could go somewhere and be completely part-time players. And I think that's the case. That's possible for all of them,
will be a chief.
Except the quarterbacks.
You know how this works. One of those wide receivers will be a chief.
Chiefs
You
have
know
too
that.
many of these
You
fucking
know
guys.
that.
Yeah, and it's going to be fucking Tyler Lockett.
The Titans will get one of them too. It's what do they say? Like Baltimore, Tennessee, and Kansas City are like where old middling wide receivers go to die.
That is where they go to die. Non-offense related move, Pat. The Browns extended Myles Garrett. Hilarious.
This was unironically hilarious. Like
hilarious.
Again, similar to Geno move, just shocked. Like he's like, hey, can we meet? Jimmy Haslam was legitimately like, no. And then that day,
$40 million a year.
$40
million a year for a defensive end, folks.
It's
wild.
Here's the thing. Myles Garrett is that good. Like, I think people kind of overlook him with all these, quarterbacks getting picked number 1 overall. Myles Garrett has lived up to that and more. It's just hilarious in the sense of how it went down. He more than deserves that contract, and it is a good move for the Browns, but it's just such a what the fuck sequence of events that I just can't get over.
Well, it's hilarious how it went down because Myles Garrett didn't demand a trade publicly because he wanted more money. He demanded a trade because he's like, I want to fucking win. Get me off of this dumpster fire. And then they were like, hey, man, what if we just give you a lot of money instead? And he was like, you know what? Okay. So he willing to lose for $40 million a year. And quite honestly, I can't blame him. The funny effects that this has is on Jamar Chase and Micah Parsons because the Bengals, as we know, publicly told everybody they were going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in the sport. This now raises that cost from what would have been $36 million to beat out Justin Jefferson to now it's at least $41 million to beat out Myles Garrett. And same thing with the Cowboys. With Micah Parsons at the same position as Garrett, relatively speaking, because Parsons kind of lines up all over the place, but they are going to have to reset the market with Parsons. And so they could have signed him for a lot cheaper had they not fucking waited like they
Jerry
do
Jones
with everybody. I don't know why they do this. I'm glad they're dumb because I don't fucking like the Cowboys and I don't want them to succeed, but
I don't even think Cowboys fans like the Cowboys.
I mean, how could you? They do this to themselves every year with different players. Like, stop waiting. It's not helping you. I just don't understand it.
Jerry's got to have the power, man. Got to have the power.
Oh, my God. But now that we've reached kind of the end of the player-by-player breakdown here, biggest winners and losers of free agency overall, and this will encompass both offense and defense.
Bears.
My winners that I've got on here, Pat, yes, the Bears are absolutely at the top because, again, they prioritized their biggest need, which was the offensive line. They got 3 new offensive linemen, Drew Dahlman through free agency, Joe Thuney, and Jonah Jackson through trades. It makes me very optimistic on where the Bears could end up next year and just how that offense is going to look.
And another thing, too, like, I think it's something that they didn't do. Like, obviously, you let Keenan Allen walk. You're going to basically get a free agent in Rome Odunze, who is now going to step fully into that starting role. It's basically like an addition by subtraction there, especially with another year Caleb, Ben Johnson. I love what the Bears did. Are they going to be really good? I don't think so, but I think we're going to see a big step in year 1.
Yes, I would agree. Another winner, I have the Patriots on here just because they finally spent a lot of that money. Again, still need the O-line and receivers addressed, but at the very least, they spent money on good players, so I can't complain too much. The Denver Broncos, Pat, that defense is going to be a fucking problem. The Broncos last year already, led the league in sacks by a lot with 63. The next closest had 54. And were 3rd in the league in points per game allowed, 18.3. They have now added Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw to that defense. 2 of the biggest standouts from the 49er defenses over the last several Super Bowl years. Yeah. Man, that's going to be an issue.
Vance Joseph is going to be having the time of his life out there.
Oh, my God.
But it's funny because when you think of Sean Payton, you think offense, and we talked about how that offense had overachieved and moved in the right direction. This could be a legitimately good team next year.
I feel pretty good about my way too early Broncos-Eagles Super Bowl prediction, if you recall that from a few weeks back.
Right.
I feel even better about that. I'm ready to dig up that clip whenever necessary if it comes to fruition because, man, this is a team where the defense really could. Look, I think Bo Nix is maybe a bit more limited than his stats suggest, but he is the type of quarterback that if you put together a fucking terrorizing defense, he's absolutely good enough to lead the offense.
Sure.
To complement it.
For sure.
So it's very possible the Broncos might make the Chiefs a little more uneasy next year than they have the last few years at the very least. And then the Vikings. They basically stole the Colts offensive line.
Yeah.
They got both Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, which that's great when you're adding new offensive linemen, Pat, and they already have chemistry together. Like at the center and guard, they have at the center and guard position. You don't have to completely rebuild that part of it. So the Vikings are making their line better for whoever is under center, and it's not Sam Darnold. And I think that's a good move too. Is just not bringing back Darnold.
And another meme I really like is they're releasing Garrett Bradbury, and it's like former first rounder, and it's like if anyone is labeled as a former first rounder, they are turbo dog shit.
It's been happening a lot. I think people really caught on this offseason to like if that's your label, you're fucked because I've seen that mentioned about
who was the
so
guy
many different guys.
The Texans traded for or got like Kayvon Green or something. I didn't even know who
They
he was.
They traded Kenyon Green to
Kenyon
somebody.
Green.
That was
I
one
didn't even
good
know
move.
who he was, let alone a former first rounder.
I didn't. Yeah, that was one good move. Was he a first rounder? I didn't even realize.
Yes, I think he was like in the top 15. That was the first time I saw the meme where it was like, if you see that, you're turbo dog shit.
Yeah, let's see. Kenyon Green got traded to the
like 14th.
Eagles. Yes, first round pick, 15th overall. God damn. And he was hot dog ass. So that was actually a good move by the Texans, even though their line stinks. They got one of the stinky linemen out of there. But yeah, I saw that mentioned about like Peyton Turner, I think, who the Cowboys might have signed.
Yes.
I think that was another one where it was like former first rounder. So yeah, it's not a people have caught on to don't say that about people. So those are the winners for right now. Losers, the 49ers, Pat. I mean, they've just lost everybody. They've lost so many pieces. Obviously, two of them to the Broncos.
At least they got Mac Jones.
Mentioned. At least they got Mac. I mean, that's honestly makes up for everything. The 49ers might be headed toward a bit of an unexpected rebuild with these moves that they're making. It's kind of odd to see.
That's what happens, though, when you, get good players here. You develop them yourselves, and then you have to pay them. Mm-hmm. You become in cap hell. Where it reaches a point where
they're paying a lot of guys right now. They are.
But I mean, you're paying a lot of guys, and so these guys have to walk. Like it's like an unwanted rebuild. It feels like it's just kind of what's naturally the next step in their natural progression. But again, they're still the 49ers. They've still got Kyle Shanahan. But yeah, to see all of those guys walk the way they did, and to see like Ian Rappaport tweeting that them signing Luke Farrell was significant.
Oh my god,
it was like a significant move, and people are just like, "Bro, is the agent's dick literally in your mouth or something?
Yeah,
what is going on there?" That's a whole other thing. If we didn't have 5 minutes left, that's a whole other story. But yeah, they are in. Again, I don't necessarily think they'll be bad. I still think they're gonna have a good bounce back year here, but. Yikes.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm definitely less confident in that whole, like, they're not going to be as hurt and they're not going to be as just down bad next year. Losing all these pieces makes me less confident. And it's bringing up some questions like, are they actually going to re-sign Brock Purdy with how they're kind of trending as far as this rebuild goes? We'll see. I don't know. Kyle Shanahan got his guy, Pat, 4 years later with Mac Jones, so maybe they won't. The Cowboys are another loser because they're just asleep. I mean, fucking Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders just does not move the needle for a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl. We think. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know what they're trying.
I was about to say, what are they doing? What is Bro doing?
And then the Seahawks, we talked about them at length. Just what the fuck is going on?
Just
and then I have question marks around the Washington Commanders just because I don't know if they're a winner or a loser because they are rightfully doing the whole we have a really good rookie quarterback thing, so let's go all in and spend some money on some guys. I don't know if I like the guys they're adding. They've traded for Deebo Samuel, who we talked about that move on its own a couple weeks ago, which is like, even if he is falling off a little bit, it's still a decent weapon for Jaden to have. They traded for Laramie Tunsil, who I almost don't understand it from either perspective because the Texans, that's their one good offensive lineman, regardless of his deficiencies. But from the Commanders' perspective, they gave up assets for a guy who led the league in penalties last year on the offensive line. And it's
That's
like
always been his problem. He's
he's
so
still
good, but he's still very undisciplined.
yeah,
in spite
he's
of how
still
good
a
he
very
is.
good tackle. So I guess I get it.
Long
It's
mask.
helping the line for Jaden Daniels, but also I don't know that that's the guy I would have gone after because I can just see him right now, Pat. Like the Commanders are going to have these games that they're in close games, and he's going to kill drives. He kills drives every once in a while with these penalties, and it's more than every once in a while. It's kind of routine. So I was a little surprised. I don't know. It seems like they had the right idea and are maybe not exexecuting it the best way.
Well,
I don't
it
know
could
if
just
I like
also
the moves they
be
made.
availability. He might have just been
Right,
the best
right.
guy they could have wound up with. Because again, the kid can play, but yeah.
And then they paid a lot of money to Javon Kinlaw, like a questionable amount of money. So I don't know. I'm a little
Former first
wary.
rounder.
I'm a little wary about the Commanders' moves here because I think they got the right plan. I don't know that they're executing it the right way. That'll do it for NFL stuff, Pat. Weekly Yukon update here right at the end. As we are recording this, they are heading into the second round of the Big, I guess technically the third round of the Big East tournament because they had a bye in the first. Managed to squeak by Villanova because we are just the most second half team that there ever
you're lucky.
was.
You're lucky.
Why's that?
Because that game tipped at like 10:30 last night.
Oh, I know.
Eastern time.
I know.
And they're the
aware.
late. And they're the late game. They're the 9 p.m. game
I
again
know.
tonight. I'll be at work, so at least I'm gonna be getting paid to watch it. But like I can like last night was just hell. I'm like. I'll just sit there, even waiting for 9:30. I'm like, man, this is taking forever, and then awful, just awful.
Tale of two halves because UConn's biggest deficiencies this year and why they're not what they were last year is mostly defense related and turnover related.
Yeah.
But UConn actually played some really nice D in the second half of that game. First half, no. Second half allowed 20 points the entire half to Villanova and held the leading scorer in the country, Eric Dixon, to 8 points for the entire game. So, look, if this defense can step up here a little bit, Pat, with the offense already being an elite one in terms of the big picture of the country, they Huskies could make some noise here, Pat. I don't know. I'm a little interested. So, but that'll do it, folks, for this episode of Brand Coverage. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back presumably on Tuesday, which hopefully some stuff happens from now till then, because now that we've shortened the window, Pat, I don't know how much news is going to come out, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure out what we're going to do.
We'll do a little dance.
We'll do a little jiggy jig. Folks, thank you for tuning in. For Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you guys next week.
I don't have anything sus to say. Bye-bye.
All right, and for those of you guys still here, first we will go through our super chats. Bucko with £5, brother.
of them today.
Keep giving me currency I can't spend. Just kidding, I'm sure I can. Said, can
That
you
is so
explain?
easy to convert that, bro.
Can you explain bowl games and CFB to an uneducated Brit because they look like participation trophies for teams not good enough for the
Correct.
playoffs?
Correct.
They used
they're
to
mainly
have
for
more
money.
prestige. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's money
for
now, basically. The schools make good money off of it. It's a great advertising opportunity for these companies that do the bowl games, and it's just a chance for these kids to play one more game. They get like a gift. Yeah, they're meaningless. They used to be a lot more. I don't care about them anymore, but they used to be a lot of fun. Even the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl used to be, but now it's just kind of
Yeah, it is absolutely participation trophies. I was saying that back when people still thought like bowl games were cool. So no, I'm totally with you. Cameron Myers with 199 said, can you rank how the Broncos did in free agency? We basically did. I think if I had to rank among all the teams, based on like just where they already were heading in, might be number one because they just added pieces to make them a real contender.
the only team that I would think of is ahead of them is just the Bears, because I think like it makes sense what you just said, that the Bears have a much bigger leap to go than the Broncos.
Yeah.
I think the Bears made the bigger leap, but the Broncos are going to still be in the better position. So yeah, one or two.
Bucko with another 5 said, will Mac Jones provide a proper challenge for Purdy as QB1? Will Shanahan finally getting the QB he reportedly wanted over Trey Lance? Go ahead, Pat.
No.
Thank you.
No, he won't.
Oscar with $5 said, what up, fella? First time joining your stream. Love your content. I'm a Raiders fan, and getting Geno is not a bad trade
Oscar.
for some chips. Yeah, that is a great trade. We talked about it like that is just, it was good value. It wasn't only getting a good quarterback to kind of hold down the fort here for a little bit. It was, you didn't have to give up a lot, Pat. I mean, third rounder is more than good enough for a quarterback of his caliber for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Alex with
Sorry, you're a Raiders fan,
499.
Oscar.
Alex the 499 said, never forget that A. Rich's pro comp on Walter Football was Cam Newton / Christian Hackenberg. Pat, chances the Raiders draft a speedy receiver over Tet. Thoughts, Pat?
If they do that, I don't even know what I'll do. I don't know what I'll do. Tet is the best wide receiver in this class, and if he is there, and if that is the direction that they decide, they can't dare. Basically, you're asking if they're going to Darius Hayward Bay it again.
They're going to draft 165-pound Tez Johnson. I actually think he's like 145 pounds. They're going to draft Tez Johnson from Oregon.
Like
Skinny boy.
I fucking hope not. I don't think they're going to go receiver, but they also Henry Ruggsed it, but that means something else as well.
Oh dear.
Also, your tweet, man, you got funny replies to your, like the one you tagged me in yesterday. The replies had me cracking up, man. These guys are, man, these guys are funny in your replies.
Jake with $5 said, Bran, you're the expert. Every single mock draft I see has the Patriots trading
The
back.
fuck am I?
You're not the Patriots guy. Fuck you. I mean, your name is Pat, so I guess you should be. But
Yeah.
Are the Patriots going to trade back? Would you do that? You always have to stay nimble to find out what teams want to offer you to trade up. The Patriots have enough needs that I would understand it. At the same time, if like Travis Hunter's there and we trade out of it, I'll be pretty upset because I don't want to do that.
That's the thing with the skill position players like the quarterbacks and Genty and in Tet, like you could potentially get great value from Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter,
right,
who could very well be #1 overall picks in terms of their talent. So if a guy like that's there, that's tough to pass on.
Yeah, 100%. Gwendolyn with $4.99 said, would you rather JJ request a trade to the Giants or Aaron Rodgers turn JJ into Trey Lance? I mean, I don't think he's going to be Trey Lance. Trey Lance is kind of a once-in-a-while sort of draft bust.
Kid hasn't even played yet.
I know. Out of these options, I'd rather JJ go to the Giants, I guess, because I don't want him to be Trey Lance, but that's not going to happen. So, Bucko with 10 said, hi guys, 2 questions. 1, who's going to be the steal and bust of the draft? 2, are the Rams an easy bet for the NFC West division title with the 49ers and Seahawks gutted and them keeping Stafford? I think so.
To answer the second question first, I mean, I don't know if they're an easy bet, but if I had to bet, yes, that's the way I'm going.
I would agree. And then who's going to be the steal and bust of the draft? I mean,
Abdul Carter.
Abdul Carter. Yeah. If he doesn't go first overall,
if he goes 3 or 4, that would be crazy. If he goes 3, steal. I don't know. I don't know enough yet. I mean, we're still 2 months away. I gotta dig in. I'm still in. I don't even know what mode I'm in right now, but I gotta dig in.
I'm in the same boat. And then bust of the draft, I'll just say, if Jackson Dart gets drafted in the first, it might be Jackson Dart.
It's going to be whoever the Raiders take.
Whoever the Raiders take. Omega with $9.99 said, the Ravens are looking to trade Andrews. There's a reason the Ravens don't run 3 wide receiver sets. Their wide receiver 3 last year was Nelson Aguilar. They need wide receivers with good hands, and that's D-Hop.
Oh, he's absolutely an upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong there.
I also disagree with the idea that the reason they don't run 3 receiver sets is just because their wide receiver 3 was bad. These teams have schemes that they stick to for a reason. There's a reason the Ravens also have a good third tight end in Charlie Kolar. And
they really do.
And that's because they want to. This is what they want to do. The reason they haven't gotten a better third receiver ever is because they don't need one. And that's why DeAndre Hopkins is also not a good third receiver. He's good enough to be a depth guy, but he's not good enough to be like, well, now the Ravens are going to run 3 receiver sets because they have a guy. That's just not really how that goes. So that the Ravens have always been, when you think of the Ravens, you think of running. That is why they are a 2 tight end team, because most of the time that is what you have out there when you are running, or in an optimal situation at least.
And we was catching them unlike Aguilar.
Unlike Aguilar. Fuck Aguilar. Alex with 199 said, do a deep dive on the Bengals front office. You'll quickly see. No, thank you. Mike with $5.
They're probably rich assholes. Woo, got it.
Said, hey, Bran, loved your guest appearance on Grossi's stream. Would love to see you and Perna collab. Yeah, I met Perna. We have not done any videos together, but maybe eventually.
Is that the guy who Chat GPT thought was you on draft weekend?
Yes, it was.
Our buddy Connor, he asked Chat GPT who Brandon Carney was, and they told us about Brandon Perna.
Yeah, Yeah, it like mixed both of ours because it was like, oh, he makes like these funny skit videos, which like Perna doesn't do. But then it was like, it like mentioned Perna's last name and just like other stuff that he does that I don't do. So it was like, you tried, ChatGPT. You were awfully close. Liam with 499 said, what are your thoughts on the Giants' new defense? Where do you think it ranks among the rest of the league? Ooh. I mean, they signed. What did they do? They signed Adoree Jackson. I know that.
Still got. They hung on to Sexy Dexy there. He's really been.
Let me
fantastic.
see, because I have, truthfully, if there's any team I've paid less attention to than the Giants in free agency, I don't know who that would be. Let's see: Chauncey Golston, Javon Holland, Chris Board, Roy Robertson Harris, Paulson Adiba. Okay, I mean, hey, it's not bad. It's serviceable now.
But yeah, that's the thing is just that their offense is probably still going to be so bad that it won't.
Their
matter,
offense is going to put their offense is going to put their defense in pretty poor positions at times, and that's going to be troubling. But yeah, it's better. It's NFL caliber now, I would say. And then T-Ray 84 with 499 said, I'm praying either Carter or Hunter falls to us, please. I'm hoping you're a fellow Patriots fan. Same. Yes, very much same.
Whoever you are, the answer is yes to that question, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I think these teams picking around 4 or 5 would be thrilled.
Yes. And then we'll answer a couple of you guys' questions from the general chat here before we pop off for the day. Let's see. Smexy says Sanders is my bust. I think that's a fair pick for draft bust.
Andrew's going to go to the Chargers for Khalil Mack. Good Lord. If Mark Andrews on that team, good Lord.
Man, speaking of Chargers tight ends, Pat, I guess we should talk about Stone Smart went to the Jets. Stone Smart's about to pop off, baby. Stone Smart is going to get 113 targets next year. Mike also said you should really consider making sugar-free maple syrup a reoccurring character in your 2025 sketch.
Sugar-free maple syrup? Isn't that just what maple syrup is? I fucking hate maple syrup. So
no, it's not all sugar-free. There was a video I made where I think that was one of the Patriots O linemen was sugar-free maple syrup.
No, I mean, isn't maple syrup just sugar? Not sugar-free? Isn't it just sugar? I don't know. Like I said, I fucking hate maple syrup, so I don't know.
JB said, how do you think an expansion franchise or expansion division would totally mess with the NFL with things like talent distribution, the draft, and if you'd like to see that in the future? I think it's inevitable at some point.
I am a huge fan of expansion drafts. The idea of expansion drafts.
They're so fun.
Even
fun.
in the NHL, I don't follow the NHL at all, but I've been so fascinated by their expansion drafts. Back in 2020 during COVID, MLB Trade Rumors did like a whole hypothetical MLB expansion draft, and it was just so fucking cool. Obviously, it's going to take the team some time. Like, you look at the Texans and the Jaguars, they still really have not had any kind of truly prolonged success. The Texans had some good years in there recently, but like, that's how long it takes in these situations. But it's absolutely going to happen. There are cities, whether they want to go to Europe or Mexico or wherever, but like, it's destined to happen. It's going to happen in I don't know. Again, NHL's been expanding, so it's probably going to happen in all 4 leagues within the next decade, I would say.
Yeah, I've been waiting for it to happen in a league that I actually follow, be it the NFL or the NBA or even the MLB, because I have, like you said, followed it sort of passively with the NHL and the WNBA, which I know honestly more about than the NHL. I would be so excited to see what that team would look like in year 1. And just because like, it's not going to have any great players on it, but it's going to have a bunch of like C+ players just all on the same roster based on, there's always a protection system.
Oh, the Raiders,
all that basically. So that would be interesting. Let's see here. What else we got? Someone said, Bran, name your top 5 receivers as of right now. Chase, Jefferson, 1 and 2, however the fuck you want to put them. After them,
Jacoby Myers.
No. After them, CeeDee Lamb, probably. Puka. And I'm looking at the receiving leaders just to make sure I don't forget anybody. Give me A.J. Brown at 5. Say A.J. Brown. I think any of these other LSU guys might penetrate the top 5 pretty soon. Malik Neighbors,
What?
Brian Thomas Jr. They're gonna
They
what?
might want the top 5.
Omega with 4.99 said, Brand, remember you're not allowed to do skits because that woman does it. Yes, Annie Agar. I know she's the only one allowed to do skits according to.
I don't know if you've
social
noticed,
media feed.
Bran, but like anytime these strangers complain about that, I just reply and say you're hotter. I say yeah, but who's hotter?
I appreciate that. Also, I like Annie. She's genuinely one of the people that inspired me to do this. Also, though, respectfully, she posts like once a month. I post every day. Give me some credit here, for fuck's sake.
Better than hers. I'm not just glazing in it because I know you, but
I appreciate that. Tua's biggest fan with 4.99 said, if Hunter gets taken before the Pats pick, who would you want to take, McMillan or O-line? I mean, Carter, assuming the 2 quarterbacks went. And then assuming somehow the 2 quarterbacks didn't go, yeah, I guess give me Ted. Or honestly, Tyler Warren. I love Tyler Warren, too, at the tight end spot. I'd be totally cool with that.
We talked about the running back class. The tight end class is really good, too. Like, this is gonna be a much more fun draft season for us this year than it was.
Absolutely. All right, I think we can call it there, Pat. I have to fucking pee really bad, so I think
I have to go to work in like 45 minutes.
Pat has to go to work, so Pat squeezed us in here
Mouse
for the
has me
pod
by
today.
the cock and balls.
He had me for a while too, and then I put him in the fucking trap. All right, folks, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Brand Coverage once again. We will be back here, we believe, on Tuesday. Go Huskies! And for Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.